The Scream Kings are in no way responsible for any encounters with the paranormal, extraterrestrial abductions, eldritch insanity, hauntings, hexes, curses, demonic possessions, cryptozoological sightings, or any loss of sleep from listening to this podcast.
This is the Scream Kings podcast. I'm Max George.
I'm NJ Gallegos.
And I'm Nathaniel Darkish.
Now is the time.
This
is the hour. Ours is the magic. Ours is the podcast.
This is
How about we say one sentence each?
Yes, that's good.
No, let's just do it all at the same time, but just like, let's do it at like a relatively normal pace instead of like kind of dragging it out.
3, 2, 1. Now is the time.
This is
the
hour.
Ours is the magic.
Ours
is the podcast.
See,
my God.
What if we just tried it without
This is terrible.
pauses between them? Just like, now is the time. This is the hour. Ours is the magic. Ours is the podcast. Like we're doing a Lin-Manuel Miranda style rap.
All
Ready, set, go. Now is the time.
This is the hour.
Nathaniel, that was you.
No, it wasn't. Then it lagged because I crushed it.
It was definitely you.
Maybe this is our intro. Honestly, this is a mess. But like in the best way, everyone. We're talking the craft.
And this is why we don't do magic all witchy like very effectively, because we can't.
Excuse me, I do magic just fine. Thank you.
How?
It's exhausting.
We can't even chant effectively. Good heaven.
I don't know why we've waited this long to do the craft. This movie is remarkable and so stupid good. I'm so excited.
And you have never seen it, right, Nathaniel?
Yeah, this is my first time. I watched it last night.
Oh my gosh. Are you gay now?
I mean, a little bit, but really mostly just for Nev Campbell, which was already kind of the case.
Oh,
yeah,
Nev Campbell's
fair.
so good. All right, everyone. If you have not figured it out, we're talking The Craft, the 1996 masterpiece, directed by Andrew Fleming, written by Andrew Fleming and Peter Filardi.
Who wants to give us the condensed version of the plot?
Ooh, me. Let me do it.
Okay.
I would like to start with, this is one of my top 10 favorite movies, so there's that.
Likewise, NJ.
Oh, so good. So
Color me surprised.
All right,
Nathaniel.
straight. Go watch, I don't know, Rick and Morty.
Maybe you should just go hang out with Chris and throw a football or something.
Ooh, yeah, and invite all of your girlfriends to just watch you.
I mean, who doesn't want to watch
NJ.
the Ulrich throw a football? Oh, wait, actually.
Continue, NJ.
The Craft is a masterpiece of a movie in which Sarah, a very troubled loner, moves to LA with her family and enrolls in the local Catholic high school. And she soon falls in with a group of misfits who practice witchcraft. And they band together, use various spells, curses against those who cross them. And the other girls, led by the mean queen Nancy, turn on Sarah, but they have underestimated the power of the natural witch.
Oh no.
And then they're like, witch, please.
Oh boy.
Stop it.
This movie is so phenomenal. I don't even know where to start with all of the good.
Should we just start with like what worked in the story? Because I mean I think it's a surprisingly like really well thought out, very cohesive story, and like I like that it is coming. it feels very true to a high school experience more than a lot of other, especially like 90s movies. Obviously not perfectly. I mean, we have a bunch of 20-somethings playing teenagers, but it still felt more grounded in that world than a lot of other 90s movies.
And I think that makes this movie extremely effective, and that's why it's still so impactful now, because I remember watching this, and I was probably like 13, and I had recently moved, changed schools, so you're the new kid, and going into a new school and knowing nobody, you just feel how powerless it is, and especially, as a teenage girl, like, girls are fucking mean. Like, they are so mean.
The worst.
Like, literally the worst.
Terrified for my daughter when she grows up, because she had bullies when she was like 6 and 7. It's like, what are you doing, girls? Stop it.
Well, you need to teach her witchcraft, obviously.
Working on it. No, I have to agree. I think the way they portrayed the high school setting is very transparent. I think a lot of times in our 90s movies, and even in the 2000s, late 2000s, it's this like idealistic lifetime that you have in high school, and The Craft, I think, really just kind of cuts through all that bullshit. It sucks. You have bullies, it's awkward, it's uncomfortable, and you're really trying to navigate who to be friends with and who not to be friends with. And you have no idea. You're just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and sometimes you're like drawn to people that you maybe know aren't that good for you. Like I think like right off the bat, Sarah, is kind of recognizing that, especially like Nancy is kind of the worst in certain ways. She's like mean to her from the very beginning, and also she's kind of drawn to Skeet Ulrich's character, whose name I can't remember at the moment.
Christopher.
Oh yes, Chris Hooker. So so she's kind of like drawn to people that like she objectively knows like aren't going to be great. Immediately people are like, yeah, you want to stay away from him. And yet she's still just like, but maybe. And it's not just like, oh, I like bad boys. It's kind of just like, oh, hey, like, she is still trying to figure out what she wants out of life. We know, or we learn pretty quick that, like, a suicide attempt was in her past and all of that. And so she's still trying to figure out who she wants to be. She doesn't necessarily have, like, a mother figure that she's connected with in a meaningful way. Her stepmom seems, okay, but maybe a little flaky. Her mother died shortly after born. All of these things are kind of, present in mind, and it feels, connected to her experience, which, yeah, sometimes, like, these backstories don't seem to fit, but this, I felt like, I really believed her, especially as a character.
Well, and the characters are dynamic as well. Nancy's not just this, like, spooky goth girl, right? She's complicated. She comes from a kind of a troubled home life as well. And then you have Bonnie and Rochelle, who are dealing with their own things, body image issues, racism. Like, they're very fleshed out characters in the first third of the movie, and that really connects you with them in a way that a lot of 90s horror doesn't. They're not just fodder to be killed.
Yeah, and it actually, yeah, like, really kind of took its time, but was still interesting and fun to watch for that opening section, right? Like, I felt like the pacing was slower than I'm used to for this kind of, sort of teen, fun horror romp, but it really paid a lot of good dividends because we did get to know the characters and, like, what they cared about a lot more.
And NJ, as the resident female, it's us two
as our token female.
As us two white men are talking about the female experience in high school, how did it resonate with you? I know you mentioned a little bit, but
Massively. Yeah, because, as I said, going into a school and not really knowing anybody and having to wade through those waters and like you guys were saying, figure out who's good, who's not, and sometimes even knowing who isn't good for you, but still falling into it anyway, just because you want some acceptance and whatnot. I enjoyed how it immediately separated Sarah from the other three girls, though, as being she's the good witch. You know, they go to the what is it, the occult witchcraft shop or whatever.
Sure.
Mm.
And all the other girls are like, hey, let's go shoplifting. It's cool. You want to go shoplifting? And she's like, well, I'll just pay for my stuff. I love that.
Nerd. No, I definitely agree. Like that was a good way to show character, especially because like it was so obvious that the shopkeeper knew that the other girls were stealing and appreciated that, you know, one of them was actually willing to have a conversation with her and actually like show honesty, and then accordingly she was like, hey, like let me actually like teach you about this.
Yeah, I like that quite a bit. And I just felt like this entire movie was very like girl power, you know, Spice Girls, girl power. Yeah. Power of the sexes.
Yeah. So much so. Like, the men in this show were side pieces, right? Which is honestly so nice to see sometimes. The protagonist, the antagonist, it was all female led, and it was great.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it more maybe in the cons, but he's almost a caricature of a douchebag.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean he was very similar to his character in Scream, which, like, I think it's unfortunate that this movie and Scream came out like right at about the same time, just because his character feels similar. Just, you know, in Scream he's a murderer. But yeah, other than that, you're just like, oh, what a dick.
Yeah.
He's just got such a punchable face, though.
He really does.
He does. Skeet. Sorry, Skeet.
Sorry that your name is Skeet.
Skeet, skeet, skeet. You know what that means, right?
No.
For real.
Explain it to us.
Dragonite's hyper beam.
Oh, why didn't you say so?
Oh my god, we didn't even tell our listeners about my fantasies. It's fine.
It has something to do with the Elite Four, and that's all we're gonna say in Pokemon.
Exactly. Pokemon. Speaking of Pokemon, this movie is so gay. Like, so fucking gay.
Mm-hmm. Yes, is that a thing, like, with witches? Like, are they supposed to kiss? Because, like, if so, why am I not doing this?
That's what I learned from this, and also Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah, I think it comes down to there's no sense of morality, really. Well, let's say heteronormative morality when it comes to Wicca and the occult. You look at people like Aleister Crowley, who was very much free love. Sex is power. It's not, you know, some sort of social contract with God. And so I think for us queer people, watching occult movies like this, The Craft and others, it's a way to express this forbidden, quote-unquote, love that we have in a safe space. And these four witches are very clearly lesbians. And just the energy that they were giving off, and the whole tone of the film was very queer positive. There weren't any, you know, in-your-face queer themes per se, other than the kissing when they were entering the sacred circle. And it was like a peck on the cheek, right? It was harmless. But, you know, I mean, Nathaniel, as a straight man, did you feel this was a queer-infused film?
Duh.
Right? Like, it's very, very apparent, and you can't watch The Craft and say, like, oh, this is a straight movie for straight people.
It was fried green tomatoes levels.
I don't know. NJ, from like a lesbian kind of non-occultish viewpoint, what did you think?
Oh, very, very queer. And watching it, when I was younger and not realizing how very gay I was. Even then I picked up on this because it was kind of tantalizing. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
ooh, this is spicy. Like, this was what, 1996? So
Yeah.
this was kind of ahead of its time, I would even argue. We weren't seeing a lot of that.
It really pushed in kind of the AIDS epidemic at the time, right? In the early 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can get into this later because I'm going to nerd out all over this film about the occultism and the realisticness of it all. But a part of why I'm so drawn to the esoteric is because there's no strict code of morality. People can be who they are without feeling like they're governed by some sort of judgment above their heads. And I think this film really does a good job at letting these characters just kind of be who they are and allowing a safe space for queer individuals to connect with them, which is hard to find, especially in the 90s, right? What other films kind of push these queer themes so heavily?
I mean, the only one I can think of is like Jennifer's Body, but that's probably 2000 still. So
Yeah, that was
Yeah, and later on in
fried
the
greens
2000s.
tomatoes.
But in all seriousness, the 80s was the golden age of horror, but look at any of the slashers, any of the supernatural films, they're all very heteronormative. The only one that comes to mind that maybe pulls out of the box is Sleepaway Camp, and that's problematic in itself because it villainizes transgenderism. So, round of applause to The Craft for doing what it did.
Here, here, here. And another thing I think that The Craft did extremely well is I felt like they went with different types of horror throughout that was all pretty top notch.
I agree.
Yeah, like they didn't rely on just one single thing. I personally found the body horror to be terrifying, especially as like a teenage girl, whenever they use their curses and they have Ben Stiller's wife losing her hair for being a racist piece of shit. And
You mean Marsha from the Brady Bunch movie?
Ugh, Marsha. Don't even get me started on Marsha.
Marsha.
But just the simple her losing her hair, like, it was still so horrifying in the way that happened, because that's a very what's the word, distinguishing feature of being a teenager. It's very important. You gotta curl your bangs. It's a whole thing, especially in the 90s.
Well, and I think it harkens back to how this film really captures that high school feeling, right? What's worse in high school?
Yeah.
Being racist or losing your hair, Like, it's so mundane, but it's so impactful as a teenager.
Right. And Bonnie's medical treatments, whenever she's sitting in that chair and the needle is just...
Ugh.
Oh.
Yep.
Do you think they just, like, poured a bunch of glue on
For sure.
Neve Campbell's back? Was it just glue?
It did kind of look like glue, didn't it? Like rubber cement.
Yeah, that's what I thought. We've all done that thing in elementary where you put glue on the back of your hand.
Yeah,
and
like the
dry.
white paste, and yeah.
And then you peel it off and you're like,
Especially
"Oh, no,
especially when it when the treatment's working because of the spell. Yeah, I was like, oh, that's just straight up like just peeling like the glue. That's exactly where my brain went.
But it was
100.
satisfying.
100%.
Very satisfying.
Man,
so good.
Someone's job was to just like pour glue on Neve Campbell's back.
Why can't that be my job?
I was gonna say okay straight, but then NJ came in with the kill there.
I set it up, you knock it down.
Thank you.
But
The only
you know.
thing you two have in common is liking women. So
Oh yeah, that's the only thing.
That's it.
yeah, for sure.
We're not great friends in other ways too.
Not at all. Only your sexuality. I'm reducing you to that. Like the rest of America.
Thanks, America.
Outside of our sexuality, the actresses in the show, holy cow, everyone. The Four Witches are so fucking good. So fucking good.
Especially,
I mean,
especially like
Firuza
props.
as Nancy? Like, wow.
Yeah, she's kind of a
And like,
tour de
did you have
force.
like a? Did you kind of have a little crush on her too?
100
Just 'cause she's
100%. And Nev Campbell as Bonnie, that was me. That is me. Like, her little demure shyness in the beginning, and then she just becomes this, like, badass
Smart
bitch. Ugh! So good! So good.
I just love them all. My God.
Yeah,
Okay, but who's your favorite? You gotta pick one of the four.
So favorite, honestly, probably Nancy, just because she is so unhinged. I love it.
Yeah, she really does a good job of being a convincing villain that we believe, but like empathize with a little bit too.
And you
Yeah.
can't blame her too much because, you see her home life and, her mom is with that stepdad that's groping her and is a
Ugh.
total pig. And then,
Yeah.
she makes him have a grabber, which is, in the biz, we call that a heart attack, a grabber.
I was gonna say, as Nancy goes, I wouldn't categorize her as a villain. I'd
No.
categorize her as the antagonist to our protagonist. But Chris and Laura were more of a villain to me than anything.
Agreed.
I mean, she does literally try to murder Sarah. I think
Sarah was trying to bind her.
Yeah, like I think for the vast majority of the movie, she is just an antagonist. In the final act, she goes full villain. But yeah, like regardless of kind of where
I'm gonna push back a little bit on you, Nathaniel, because I think if we're classifying murder as the category to be a villain, like, we can flip that onto anybody who kills anybody in film. I think it's way more complicated.
She murders 2 people and tries to murder a third.
Chris deserved it, first off.
I mean,
yeah, Chris was a rapist.
I'll give you that 2 of them definitely, deserved it, but at the end of the day, it's like she, basically is mad at someone, and so she tries to kill her. If that's not villainy, I don't know what is.
So we could poke the bear and assume that she's possessed by Manon. So is it Nancy who's doing this, or is she a puppet of Manon?
No, because Sarah opens herself up to Manon and communicates that Manon is actually mad at Nancy for the thing she's doing.
Sure, but Manon is supposed to be the all spirit. Whoever is the vessel is causing the acts. So again, I think it's complicated. I would not say Nancy is the villain of this show.
I'm going to go with, I think, textbook villain for just that last act. The rest of it, yeah, she's kind of more of an antagonist.
I think that's your English degree talking, but that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, story analysis. That's what we're talking about.
So my opinions are moot.
I'm just saying I'm right.
There we are.
Moving on.
But regardless of how we want to label it,
I'm trying. Go on, Nathaniel.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that I find her super compelling to watch, to kind of watch the way that she goes from justifying small things to justifying bigger things. And at first, like, one of the best scenes in this movie to me is after they have the circle on the beach, and then they walk over and it's like all of the dead sharks, and she is like, oh, it's a gift, and she's like touching them. How that plays out, and just like the idea that she's just kind of like reveling in this power of destruction, and that's the thing that she thinks is so exciting and so beautiful, is really a great character moment.
Yeah, so my occult brain is on fire right now, but we'll get to that later, I guess, because I don't think that is insidious or malicious in any way.
No.
There's beauty in death. The death card in tarot is transition and her kind of coming into her power.
And I agree, and that's absolutely, like, the moment where the thing that she's excited about isn't inherently bad. It's that she then begins to take it in a bad direction as she sees that the power can benefit her when she does, right? That's to me what is kind of like the dark temptation is, oh, well, I can have anything I want. And at first it's, hey, I want to make a better life for me and my mom. And then it's, oh, if you're mad at me, I'm going to, or, if you do something that displeases me, then you're a bug to be squished. And I like how we can kind of see that natural progression. And yeah, at first it's just like, ooh, destructive power is beautiful and interesting. And then it's one thing after the other after the other. Like, I love how that it becomes this kind of domino effect over the course of the remainder of the movie from that, like, one moment.
And I agree. I'm still going to hold to the fact that I don't think she moves from antagonist to villain. And maybe, there are semantics there between the two ideas of what is an antagonist, what is a villain, right? Mm-hmm. Is one inherently evil? And then we have to define evil and what that means. And is murder evil? And then if murder is evil, we have to look at all of cinema history and decide what murder is considered evil and what murder is considered altruistic, right?
Yeah.
So to me, she's not there yet. She's an antagonist in that she is combating against Sarah, who is our protagonist.
Just curious. Sure. Would she be a villain if she succeeded in killing Sarah?
I mean, I guess I would say yes, just because Sarah's coded as the quote-unquote good one.
Mm-hmm. Right. So what if we put our shoes in Nancy's situation? Mm-hmm. And Sarah is the betrayer. This fourth person who has created the balance of the four cardinal elements, mm-hmm. and now she's a betrayer. Mm-hmm. Is she not justified in wanting to kill Sarah? What is the greater sin, betrayal or murder?
Murder.
Well, you're going against your sisters, which is a massive betrayal.
Obviously, it's murder, right? But if we're putting ourselves into Nancy's situation, it's a common theme throughout horror, I think. The villains are always justified in their actions and their morality, and that's what makes them good villains.
Yes.
Anyway, this is turning into a philosophy discourse. Thank you, listeners. You will be charged $500 for this course credit, and you can apply 3 credits to your college degree.
Man, if only we could offer that. That'd be awesome.
That would be amazing.
Oh, I just have a lot of
Speaking of credits and whatnot, one thing I enjoyed greatly is how they had the girls meet in science class, which they all clearly do not pay much attention to.
Yes.
Yet they're leaving and practicing witchcraft.
That is, like, such a delicious detail that I didn't think about, but yeah, like, pointing that out, it just makes it so much better.
Hey, you can love science and witchcraft. They are not mutually exclusive.
Oh, you're gonna teach me witchcraft.
Oh, I fucking will, NJ. We are gonna summon demons together.
I want the one that I picked in my my thing last time.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned a little bit about the body horror. I wanted to bring up kind of the snake metaphor. So snakes in occultism and Wicca, Rosicrucianism, Thelema are very varied. Wow, say that 3 times fast. Very varied. They represent a lot of different things, and I thought that the theme in this film was really cool because it represented a lot of what you see in occultism, they represent power, transformation, sin, temptation, immortality. And the snake really was prevalent throughout the entire film. And it was cool that they weren't just putting it in a box of, the snake tempted Adam and Eve, and therefore it's evil. It had a lot more to do, so much so that Nancy's fingers, right, turn into snakes. Mm-hmm. It's this power that's overwhelming her that she doesn't know what to do with.
Well, a lot of indigenous cultures revere like serpents and snakes and whatnot, so it harkens back to, something that's even older than like mankind almost,
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing that comes to mind when you think of snakes and occult teachings is its ability to shed its skin, right? It grows from time, and that takes such a huge precedent in occultism. You're able to grow and evolve with your knowledge. And you see symbology of the Ouroboros and Asclepios in Greek mythology, the winged serpent of health, the Ouroboros, the symbol of immortality and growth. They're everywhere. And I think that's why, early writers of the Bible used it for Adam and Eve, knowledge. But that's just my occult knowledge bleeding out, and it's going to bleed out more.
Isn't the snake, that was what Nancy was carrying whenever they were going to go summon Manon?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah, there was like a clownfish,
butterfly.
Yeah, a butterfly, like a parakeet, and then a snake.
Yeah.
All of which represent different elements that they are associated with. Fun fact.
Yeah, and also kind of things that relate in some way to like their characters.
Yeah, so I myself would consider me an elemental occultist, meaning I find, a lot of energy and cathartic moments through meditation on the four elements, meaning fire, earth, air, and water. Those elements are associated with the cardinal directions, north, east, west, and south, and therefore they have different animals and symbols associated with them. And this movie did a really good job of kind of using that occult teaching and doing it in a way that was authentic and realistic. When they're summoning Manon, Nancy talks about being, the watchtower of air, which is the element of mentality and mental health, and it harkens, I think, to her mental instability, right? She's so volatile in that. And her cardinal element is east. Bonnie talks about being the watchtower of fire, and of course for her burns and her passion for what she does. That is what fire is all about in occultism. Fire is the element of passion and vigor, ambition, and her cardinal element is the self. And then you have Oh, go ahead.
Oh, and like she had a butterfly, which is a transformation, which is what she goes through over the course of the.
Exactly. Yeah, you could talk about the caterpillar going into its chrysalis and then to a butterfly is a very exothermic reaction, right? Which is causing energy, fire. It's all related. Rochelle is water, the watchtower of the west, and she seems to be kind of the rational figure of the four, kind of binding everyone together. Water is very in tune with your emotions, flowing with the group, yada yada.
She's a diver.
Yes. Sarah is earth, which is the cardinal direction of north. She is the grounding element. She comes in and balances the three. She is the protagonist, and her presence is what makes their magic live, which you plant a seed in the ground and it lives. All of these very esoteric themes for someone like little gay me who's watching and is, exploding with joy because it's so well done.
Whenever you first saw this, were you already into occultism and whatnot, or not so much?
No. So I saw it when I was a kid, and I was drawn to a lot of the magic and the like mystery of it all. But I didn't fully appreciate it until I rewatched it again in my adulthood after I had done a lot of research into a lot of these different kind of cult groups, and cult meaning, coming from the Greek form meaning hidden, right? Not James or Jonestown. So I love this film. It is an esoteric's wet dream, honestly. It does a really, really good job of both respecting the traditions and the craft, pun intended. There are some problems with it. We'll get to that in the cons, but I can go on and on.
And the soundtrack slaps.
I looked at our soundtrack, made me want to get out my sweatbands to go around my my wrists and play ska music, Nathaniel.
Ha! But there's no ska music in it. This was like pre-ska revival.
I know, it's like grunge 90s, but this is what I thought ska music was before I met you.
Before I taught you the ways.
This made me want to get my Doc Martens and go walk around Hot Topic.
Oh, Hot Topic before it was just pop culture.
Correct. Right.
Yeah. Though the whole time I was just like, man, what would this, like, the soundtrack for this movie be if it was made like 5 years later? And it would be so different, right? It'd be like 9 Inch Nails and stuff instead of what we get. Which, I mean, like, I think it still would have been full of like great bangers for what it was. But yeah, it's just like, oh, it was such a 1996 kind of gothy soundtrack that,
and it works so well, right? Like that grunge 90s is so very witchy.
What a time to be alive.
I just looked at our show notes and I had written in bold letters, never trust Skeet.
He's the worst. Oh my god. And I'm glad that, I know we complained that Scream came out around the same time and it kind of typecast him, but like, I'm kind of happy I got to go in knowing he was such a douche on Scream 2, because I was just like, Nancy, just kill him. Let's go. Come on.
mm-hmm.
But he's sorry.
He's sorry. I love that scene.
Oh, so good.
The tips of her shoes are just great. Gracing the floor.
Yeah.
Oh.
And Nancy's like head tremors that she does, and then like looks right at the camera. Whoa. Ugh. As above, so below, Nancy. As above, so below.
We're Nancy fangirls here.
That's right. Fangirlies.
Yeah, we are the weird mister.
Ooh, nicely done, Nathaniel.
Yeah.
Our dark horse coming in.
Ooh, a straight power.
I never expected to hear that said with that inflection.
You're welcome. Let's talk about some of the bad, perhaps.
I'll be honest, I didn't find a lot of this movie to dislike, but
same. I had to struggle to pull up some stuff.
I settled on some of the effects. Like, okay, whenever the girls were practicing the glamour and Sarah's like, look, I changed my hair color. Like, okay, come on.
Not even that, but when she was like, oh, my eyes are green, but now they're brown. It's
right.
like, wait, did we notice that before now? Were we supposed to?
But I do like that the other character's response was just like, wait, what?
Yeah, for sure.
That's your flex. But yeah, I will agree, especially like as soon as Nancy's fingers turned into snakes, that looked not.
They needed to be thicker snakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were like little baby gardener snakes. I mean, would the opposite be better though? Her fingers just turned into these massive anacondas.
Yes. That's what they should have done if they weren't
Just like
cowards.
these thick, meaty
Boa
I like a thick
constrictors.
snake.
made Me too. I'm the only one who likes a thick snake in this group.
Like a snake that comes with a birth certificate.
Yes, sir.
Oh my god, stop it.
Yummy, daddy. Nathaniel, I think you wrote this, but the ghost of the mom of Sarah felt a little pointless.
Yeah.
It was just like, why? I get that she was using it as like a focal point when she was in, danger, but I don't know.
It felt tacked on. It felt kind of tacked on at the end. Like, oh yes, and that's why she's the good one, as her mom was a good witch. You didn't know that? What?
Yeah, it was just kind of weird.
Yeah.
Like, look, she's in a field, and look at the sky.
Oh.
Yeah, so that was a little corny. I felt like the shop owner, the magic shop owner was kind of cool when she showed up, but like ultimately she didn't really do very much. So I felt like there was probably a version of this script that existed previously that she had a bigger role in maybe the ending, but then they just kind of trimmed that down, and what was left of her was kind of just like never went anywhere.
I will give you that. It seemed a little silly, especially when Sarah went to her and they tried to summon Manon again.
Yeah, and then she just like immediately just like ran away. Here, I have a special point of power, and but that's not going to play any role in
the lead up. Like the lead up with this, curtain that the girls can't go behind because this person refuses to let them in. Like, it felt a little cheap.
It was kind of like at your local, whenever you could rent movies and they had the curtain back door. You always wanted to go check it out.
What are you talking about?
No.
Did you guys have that in Utah, or are you guys too big of nerds?
No, we pray and read our scriptures.
No, there was definitely one not far from here that had one of those.
And it was
100%.
Like Sabrina the Teenage Witch is behind the
yes.
And the craft.
Like God intended, damn it. Manon.
And weirdly a box set of Pee-wee's Playhouse. No one was quite sure what was up with that.
No, everyone was very aware what Pee-wee was doing behind that curtain. Yikes.
Okay, fair. That was the 90s.
The hobo with the snake was also very random, I thought, in a fun way, though.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like that was just trying to, like, set some sort of ominous tone, especially when he just gets, like, wrecked by a truck. But
when he first shows up and is like, hey, are you looking for the snake? It reminded me of the Hercules guy who's like, hey, you want to buy a sundial? Except snakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder if anybody ever took him up on the offer. Like, they're like, yes, I would like to look at the snake.
Yeah.
I was half tempted to have that be our intro. Like, hey, you want to buy a podcast?
Yeah, I think especially since it's a hobo in a trench coat with a snake, like, maybe he wants to show you another snake. But yeah, I felt like that was definitely in there just to be like, we promise something cool and spooky is going to happen later. We promise.
Stay tuned.
Yeah. And I think there just might have been a better way to kind of give us a little taste of something spooky earlier besides random hobo who just happens to be standing outside their open door with a snake.
100%.
I also felt like there was maybe a scene or two that had been cut for time or something around the death of Skeet's character, in that it just kind of was like, oh, he fell out the window, and for a second I'm like, oh, did he like get injured? Is he dead? What's going on? And then they just kind of cut to like, oh yeah, I had to go talk to the police, but don't worry, I was cool about it. And you're like, I feel like there was a scene there that like would have fleshed it out a little bit more of like, yes, he's really dead. We're shocked by this. It felt so in passing in a way that yeah, it just made it almost seem like life and death didn't matter that much to these characters in a way that felt untrue, considering that we did have kind of the interesting repercussions after Nancy's, terrible stepdad died.
Agreed. When I was watching it for, I don't know, the 6th time, excuse me, today, I thought the same thing. Like, oh, Skeet dies, and everyone's just like, it's fine. He dead.
Yeah, like at the very least, like you just expect something like, other friends at school being upset or anything, but like it just seemed like it was just kind of shoved off to the side. And again, I'm guessing there was probably another scene that they ended up cutting or something, but
for sure,
maybe that wouldn't have been the worst thing to leave in.
Anything else? And Jay, before I go on my rant.
I love everything about this movie other than the Sarah's hair color when she changes it, so go on.
I have actually one more thing.
Hit me.
So that idea of everything being returned back, triple, doesn't feel like it quite ever lands in kind of that closing act, right? It gets used by Sarah to scare off Bonnie and Rochelle, but we don't actually see a real, returning of the, wrongs that they've done coming back to them. And so to me, it almost felt like, here's this rule, it's this very important rule, but it also doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and I on my rewatch today, I felt the same thing, and the loophole I created for myself is that Sarah was somehow showing mercy on the two. But you're very, very right. The rule of 3 applies regardless of any sort of situation like this.
Yeah, and
Rochelle would have lost all of her body hair, and Bonnie would have been burned at the stake, right?
yeah, and so at the very least, I thought that it might have been more effective to have that play into kind of that closing scene when she's, when they tried to like, sorry, we tried to murder you. Yeah, okay, whatever. And then she like makes the tree crack down, right? That felt kind of to me.
Yeah.
And so like if that scene had been replaced by something where it's like, hey, basically like, yeah, you two watch out. It hasn't repaid back to you yet, but it's just a matter of time. I would have been way more happy with that, because then they would be more scared for, I think, a reason that had good plot significance than, I can crack a tree and make you guys jump.
Oh no!
Right?
I agree. Yeah, for sure.
I guess I interpreted it as like, yeah, so Sarah shows mercy on Rochelle and Bonnie, but like all of the combined badness that they got into pretty much gets visited upon Nancy. I mean, she ends up in a psych ward, gibbering and screaming in a straitjacket. She had ultimate freedom, and then now she is completely caged.
Yeah, and I think that definitely worked for Nancy. But yeah, I felt like those other two.
Yeah,
I mean,
the rule of 3.
Yeah,
does not work like that, right? One
Bonnie's
person does not
too
take
hot
up
for the rule of 3.
I mean,
one person does not take 9 times worth of penance for the other 2 individuals.
3 to the 3rd power.
Hell yeah. What is that, 27?
I don't
Yes.
know. I can't do math.
Yes, that is 27.
Hell yeah, I'm a scientist, bitches.
And I'm an English teacher, and I knew that.
The only thing else I wanted to say, and this is just Max on his soapbox, but it's 1996. I get it. The plot of the film, I get it. Demonizing witchcraft and esoteric belief. I'm so tired of it, everyone. I'm so tired of it.
See, I didn't actually feel like that was ultimately the takeaway.
No, it's not the takeaway. This is just Max complaining that it's just hard for me, in 2024, watching films like this, looking back in the past of the heteronormative Christian dogma being thrown on everything, and these girls are ostracized and belittled and bullied because they have a different way of belief, because they're different from everybody else. and that difference is because they believe in nature and Manon and witchcraft, and that's bad, and so we should bully them. I'm just over it.
Okay,
Over it.
Though I do like that the message is ultimately kind of like, hey, you know, be a decent human being regardless of like what you believe. Which I mean, kind of
a little, because Nancy uses witchcraft to do the evil things that she does.
Yeah,
and so it's demonizing witchcraft still.
Yeah,
right.
But Sarah also uses it for good.
Sure. Sure. And I think that comes to this idea of light magic versus dark magic. For everyone listening, black magic is actually a racist term. I don't know if a lot of people know that. It comes from the early colonization of North America when African slaves came over and they were practicing their indigenous cultures, and the white Christians decided that it was called quote-unquote black magic because of their skin color. So dark magic versus light magic, but again, we have to define what is light, what is dark, and that is a whole other pickle to swallow. So
yeah, though I will say that it is interesting that it kind of rejects that idea a little bit in the movie, which I thought was interesting that it ultimately kind of fell to that idea, but also had, you know, our all-wise shopkeeper go, there's no such thing, it's really about like your intent of doing good or bad in the world. And you're like, okay, I don't know, it kind of like didn't quite know where to land on that.
I would disagree. I think the movie presented a very firm idea of what dark magic was versus light magic.
Yeah.
And I think that is the culmination with Nancy and Sarah, right?
Yeah.
You know, using magic to get what you want versus using magic to honor what you want. And even Sarah participated in dark magic by removing the agency of her boyfriend, which ultimately caused her to almost get raped. So I reject that idea of yours, Nathaniel. Sorry.
Oh no. I'm not saying that it's like ultimately, you know. I'm saying like that is kind of the ultimate message, but I find it interesting that we have a character that pushes it back against it and is in like an authority figure role, and that it's like the shopkeeper who tells them, oh, it's not, you know, like there really isn't light or dark magic. Like she tells them that, but again, the movie almost tells us something different. So I think it's interesting that it almost contradicts itself.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I think it's at the heart of what magic is in real life, right? It's your intention. It goes back to what Sarah was trying to do to Nancy in the end of the show. Like, I wish that you do no harm to yourself or to others.
Yes.
Which is a core tenet of Wicca, and especially Thelema, which Aleister Crowley, someone who, you know, purported to be the Antichrist and people villainize and hate, but his core tenet of Thelema is do what thou wilt as long as it doesn't hurt anybody, which people like to overlook because he's a fringe character. So, and if I could sit down to dinner with somebody, it would be Mr. Crowley. So if you're listening, Aleister, I love you.
Do you guys want to hear a spooky story?
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, tell us.
So, as a middle schooler whose friends also love this movie, one of my friends had a birthday. Every year it was the best birthday because her parents would buy us an obscene amount of candy, sodas, and then they would leave us alone in her basement and we would just watch movies. This was one we watched. We waited until our parents went to bed, and naturally we played Light as a Feather, Stiff as a Board.
As one does.
As you do. At a, you know, girls' sleepover. We never did the Sacred Circle kiss thing, which is upsetting to me, but I can add that into my mental image.
We can do that later, NJ, just you and me.
Yes. I want to hold a dagger while we do it.
Duh, I have an athame ready to go.
Yes.
It has a naked lady on it even, so it's better.
Thank God. My God. Yes. So I think that there was probably about 8 of us doing this light as a feather, stiff as a board on one of the girls that played post on our basketball team. So she's a bigger girl, taller. And we literally got her up with just our fingers. We didn't have her float. But I mean,
Gross.
she got up there. And it was weightless. It was something. It happened.
Wild.
I want to do it now. Let's put Nathaniel on the floor, and you and me will do light as a feather, stiff as a board, and see if it works.
Let's
Just
do
us
it.
two.
Let's go.
Light as a feather, stiff as a board. Light as a feather, stiff as a board. Light as a feather, stiff as
As
a
a
board.
board, light as a feather, stiff as a board.
Yeah,
Did
if you guys could lift me like that, I would be very impressed.
Don't.
you have to concentrate?
I am.
I will have you know, my 2 fingers are extremely strong.
Mine as well.
I'm just saying, I'm a big dude.
NJ, you had some notes about Buddhism and witchcraft being conjoined. I also just wanted to ask you, last time we talked about discussing the craft, you said you were going to ask me all the questions.
Yeah, I really wanted to know just a lot more about
Ask me all the questions.
well, I did do a little bit of researching and I realized Manon wasn't actually a
Real.
Yeah.
thing, right?
Big bummer, but that's fine.
So, is there like a true Manon, but they just changed the name, or what? How did that work?
Yeah, so the coolest thing I think about Wicca is it is very open to interpretation. When you join a coven, which typically is more than 3 witches / wizards / sorcerers / warlocks, whatever you assign as yourself, typically they are worshiping nature, right? There are a lot of different figures in the pantheon of the world that could represent nature. And in Wicca, where it's so nature focused, typically you'll see people praying to Hecate, the Grecian god of magic and witchcraft, or the horned god of Celtic lore. Cernunnos is his name. A lot of times people will worship Lucifer, the morning star, or Apollo, the god of light from Grecian mythology, even Odin, Zeus, Ra, Osiris. Typically, Manon, quote unquote, is a leadership of some sort of pantheon, but it can be whatever you want it to be. If you want to assign a name to your god or your goddess, that is okay in Wicca. There's no set rules. Your coven can kind of figure it out for themselves. Which I love. I love that it's so open to interpretation. And when I've done magic and spells and rituals in the past, I tend to focus more on the elements, right? I don't pray or acknowledge one specific deity, but I will pick 4 deities from different pantheons that represent the different elements, and then speak to the aether, the unification of the 4 elements, which is myself. I am earth, air, fire, and water.
Ooh.
I am life. I am a god in my own right because I acknowledge and am mindful of my surroundings.
Yeah, like all of this does have so many parallels with Buddhism and like karmic balance and, as above, so below. We are
For sure.
everything. We are nothing. It's insane.
And that's, again, I think another facet of the beauty of witchcraft and Wicca is it pulls from so many different cultures rather than focusing on the Western Christian kind of narrative. You go to any esoteric bookstore and you're going to find things on, Kundalini energy and the Buddhistic mindfulness technique, but you're also going to find tarot and the Rosicrucians, who are very Western themed, and the Knights Templar. You have people like Abramelin the Mage, who was from Sumeria, John Dee, who's from England, Aleister Crowley, who's in the United States, Nicholas Flamel, who is from Italy. All of these different individuals and their thoughts and their teachings kind of unifying it. You even have Jewish tradition, which is very prevalent in occultism, the Kabbalah and the Kaiflof. I have a necklace of the Kaiflof, and it's really teaching about these 9 different Sephiroth of tenets, balance, kindness, beauty, grace, all coming together, and that is what divinity is. So, I'm not sure if our listeners know, but I consider myself to be a pantheist, which is not, I don't worship multiple gods, I don't worship one god, but to me, God is within me and in the world I am living in. The way my daughter looks at me when she's being sassy, the face my partner looks at me when I wake up, the beauty of a sunrise or a sunset, the thunderstorms, the wind, growing my own vegetables, this kind of inert beauty that exists. To me, that is God, and I think that is the prime tenet of Wicca and witchcraft and occultism.
That's honestly how I kind of believe as well. With I'm getting more into Buddhism and mindfulness and that type of thing, and that's exactly what I believe as well. Just I need to get more spells. That's what I need. I need spells.
You need spells. Okay. I have a spell book for beginners that I'll send you. How about that?
Thanks.
And even spells really is just a mindfulness practice of, I really like sigil work. So that spell looks like you write a sentence that you're trying to manifest. I want to do better at work, or I want to be loved more by people around me, whatever. And then you kind of go through that sentence and remove all of the duplicate letters. And then you remove all of the vowels. And you're left with, single consonants, which you then have to manipulate and kind of transform into your own symbol. It could be whatever it needs to be, doesn't matter. And then you take that symbol, and what I like to do is bring in earth, bring in air, bring in water, bring in fire, and then offer that up to the universe and say, this is my intention. I want to do better at work. Here is my sigil. I offer it to you. I'm going to put in the effort. I'm going to try and do a good job. I'm going to try and do better. But this is my intention. And the act of the ritual, I think, is important. And it's something that I do carry over from my religious past, is physically doing something for your intention has power, regardless of what you believe, whether it's taking the sacrament or offering up a sigil or going to church or whatever it is. You are taking time out of your day to offer something to something bigger than you. And I believe that has power. Whether I, fully believe in it or not is irrelevant. I'm taking time and energy out of my 24 hours that were all allotted to give up this time to a greater purpose. And there's power in that, regardless of what you believe.
Yeah. Well explained. I feel like, a lot of times, these kinds of ideas feel very vague to, especially, kind of more traditional or, traditionally Judeo-Christian audiences, or even just people who are unfamiliar with practices. And so I think that is a good job of kind of explaining a lot of the intentionality behind it in a way that is either like, oh, it's evil and vague, or it's beautiful but also too vague. And so I think that explains it better than we usually encounter. So good job. Thank you for explaining that in a way that I think hopefully our audience will connect with, because at the very least, as a religious person, I agree, there is that importance of ritual, of action, actually adding to the thing that you believe, and adding to what you want to see change or grow or develop in the world. So
yeah, I mean, Nathaniel, if we pull a traditional Mormon sacrament, right? If you take that and put it into an esoteric setting, it's the same thing, right?
Absolutely.
You're having a little sip of water and a little bite of bread, but what matters is your thought going into it and the prayers that are said. So, sacrilegious aside, replace those prayers with a prayer to nature and thoughts about how can I be better tomorrow than I am today. And it's the same emotion, and I think there's beauty in that, and I think that's why I'm a pantheist, that God exists for you the same way he exists for me. He might look different, but he or she or they are still there.
Yeah.
Anyway, we could do a whole podcast, guys, where I'm just going to give a whole philosophical discussion about Max's occult teachings. Occultism to the max.
Well, that's
We need to make that happen.
clearly how we're gonna have to approach this eventually. In the meantime, should we rate this movie?
Yeah, probably. That might be good. Screams, I gave it a 3. It wasn't very scary to me. The body horror was fun. The bugs were creepy crawly. I wasn't scared at all.
Yeah, same. It was a 3.
So,
As someone who was a teenage girl, what did you rate it?
Yeah, right?
that's where it gets me. So I gave it a 7. And I mean, yeah, the body horror was good. The cockroaches freaked me out. I did not like that. But the thing that frightened me the most was Sarah finally finds where she fits in, where she belongs. And then that is stripped from her. She's alienated from her friends. And she thinks that she loses her parents, stepmom, dad. And she almost loses her life, you know. To me, I found that to be extremely frightening. And the power that Sarah tried to wield with the love spell and how it goes so wrong, and she's like practically raped, like that frightens me so much.
Well, and you lived it, right? You were a teenage girl in high school,
yeah.
Right? It speaks to a much deeper level than I think it does to Nathaniel and I.
So that's why I give it a 7.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, for sure.
Crowns.
9, almost a 10. I almost gave it a 10. My first 10 ever.
Ooh.
But it's a 9. If I didn't give Hereditary a 10, I can't give this a 10.
I also gave it a 9 because it is absolutely amazing, and 9 is my favorite number.
I gave it an 8. I really loved it. I thought it was fantastic, but yeah, mostly just, you know, a couple of those plot things that we kind of brought up as things that didn't work as well, just dropped it down a little bit for me. But like as a whole, I'm definitely revisiting this movie. I really loved it. It's very fun. It's one of those movies that like I finished it, I'm like, oh yeah, this is why this movie is so well loved. It's just a banger.
Yeah, I definitely put it on our list for our horror movie marathon this year.
Yeah.
Woo,
Woo,
woo.
woo, woo, woo! Coming to everybody in October.
And by everybody, it's if you happen to live close to us.
If you're in Utah.
Then hit us up.
I'd love to have you. Yeah, October 27th, we will be doing our horror movie marathon. We will probably be recording some of it this year because I think that would be so fun to get other people's opinions on horror movies rather than just our dumbasses.
Fair.
If I get my work schedule and I'm not off that day, I'm going to Zoom in.
I didn't even think of Zoom, NJ.
Yeah, maybe we could even just like have it be some sort of event of some. I don't know. We'll play with stuff. Who knows? Maybe we'll announce some sort of thing that you can follow along with.
Yes. Okay. TBC. To be continued.
Uh,
How are you guys staying spooky?
Well, we're gonna have to have a whole nother episode about this. But Alien Romulus.
Don't say anything. I haven't seen it. I don't even want to know if it was good or bad. Shut up, both of you.
Well, I'm going again on Saturday, so take that as you will.
Okay.
But we're doing a whole episode about it. I've decided.
Definitely.
So that. And I'm actually kind of hearkening back to The Craft 1996. I'm reading a collection of stories, and it's called Scary Stories from a Child of the Internet by Cassidy Van Gundy, and it's every story is something, 90s. So a girl that figures out how to keep her Tamagotchis alive forever. Y2K. Like, it is so glorious.
And wait, is it just Scary Stories from a Child of the Internet, or isn't it First Images?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what the hell's going on. Yes. Cursed Images, Scary Stories from a Child of the Internet. There you go.
Well, I'm definitely going to have to read
my
that because that sounds delightful.
It's amazing.
My Stain Spooky is somewhat adjacent, but let's hear what Nathaniel is.
Yes. So Romulus, of course. So
Okay, do I need to watch all of the Aliens before I go see Romulus? Does that matter?
No.
I would say Prometheus and Covenant to get the most out of it, but you don't have to.
Okay, because Mark was worried that he hasn't seen all of the Aliens. I have, of course, because I'm not a troglodyte. But he was like, I don't want to see it if I haven't seen all of them.
So my wife, she has only seen Alien and Aliens, and she did just fine.
Okay, cool. Good to know. Thank you. Continue.
So yeah, Romulus, which, by the way, listeners, if any of you have one of the rad popcorn buckets of the Facehugger and, I don't know, want to get rid of it at a reasonable price, apparently they were freaking impossible to get. I went right after work, and they were all gone already, and I'm angry about it. But
yeah, you have to like go before the theater even opens, dude.
Well,
they're wild.
I'm a high school teacher. I can't do that.
No, I know. The workers at the theater buy them and then will sell them online for exorbitant prices.
Oh yeah, no, I looked at eBay like 2 days ago, and they were like up to like $200, and I'm like, this is stupid.
Yeah, I wanted the D&D one and fell into the same trap. So it's dumb.
Well, if anyone doesn't want to price gouge me, hit me up. But another thing I read recently, or I listened to the audio version, is Incidents Around the House by Josh Malerman. So Josh Malerman, I think, is probably best well known for Bird Box, which was a pretty solid book, I think, and made it for a decent movie. And I've read a few of his other ones that like just kind of were to me. But Incidents Around the House is kind of a banger. Basically, it is a novel that is written from a child's perspective, and it's kind of taking that sort of classic imaginary friend gone wrong sort of thing that I think we've seen a bunch of times, especially in the last probably 20 years with a lot of horror movies. But it goes further with it than your typical movie does, and I thought it was really well done. I felt like the perspective really added to the tension. It's pretty freaking great. I really enjoyed it a lot. So, Incidents Around the House by Josh Malerman. Max, how are you staying spooky?
Oh, with a lot. I just went camping for the last 5 days, and when I go camping, I always try and read a book that is spooky. And I'm halfway through Jackal, which was recommended to us. It is written by Aaron E. Adams. It's not terribly spooky so far, but it is very, very, very well written. The prose is spectacular. Really impressed so far. Additionally, we have a guest that will be joining us very soon by the name of Anastasia Garcia. And they wrote a wonderful, fun, spooky book called Ghostly Ghastly Tales, Frights to Tell at Night. It is adjacent to our classic goosebump stories or scary stories to tell in the dark. It takes various horror stories from around the world, legends, lore, urban myths, and turns them into kind of campfire ghost stories to tell to children between the ages of 9 and 12. The art is phenomenal, and the cover glows in the dark, so that's always a fun bonus.
Yeah.
That sounds badass.
I also finished a very short kind of a lecture series from the Great Courses. I don't know if you guys have done the Great Courses before, but
I'm familiar with
essentially. Essentially, it's like a college class you can take for free. They do a series of lectures that run between an hour to 4 hours, depending on your lecture. I listened to one by Emily Zarka called Serial Killers, Real and Imagined. It went into kind of the cultural zeitgeist of what a serial killer is. there's some problematic stuff, and I think Emily tries to portray these serial killers as more legends than actual terrible human beings who did terrible things. But her dissection of our fascination with serial killers and how culture and the media kind of create this constellation of what serial killers are was very fascinating and intriguing, and I would highly recommend it to anybody. Just keep a note that serial killers are horrible, horrible people who do terrible, terrible things. And are not just some invention by the zeitgeist of society. So
Yes.
She does recommend, though, reading the books Psycho, the OG Psycho, and American Psycho. So I've purchased those two, and they are currently on my reading list. So I will return and report.
Okay. Yeah, I've read both of those, so yeah, we'll have to compare some notes.
Did you like them?
I really like Psycho. I'm impressed with American Psycho for what it is, but it gives me the ick. So
yeah, what Emily Zarko talks about is Psycho is like the foundation of the serial killer themes, and then American Psycho is like taking it into the modern age, and just the differences between the two and how they are the same but different in weird ways. So, which is why I bought both books.
Well,
so I'm curious to find out.
Well, if you like American Psycho, there is a book, interestingly enough, that is like really weird meta horror book that Bret Easton Ellis also wrote, in which Patrick Bateman starts to become like real, even and like he is the main, like Bret Easton Ellis is the main character, and basically like his own creation starts like maybe haunting him. So it's called Lunar Park. It's interesting. I don't know if it was as successful at that concept as I wanted it to be, but it's an interesting read, and it has some
yeah. In the lectures, Emily really dissects three main literary characters as the pinnacle of our modern day idea of what a serial killer is, and it's Norman Bates, Hannibal Lecter, and then Patrick Bateman are the three kind of trifecta of what everyone now thinks of a serial killer to be.
Sure.
So it was interesting. I think you would like it, Nathaniel, because she is an English major and a professor of horror literature.
Ooh.
So I might send you the Audible.
Do that.
And it was free, so bonus.
When?
All right, everyone. Thank you. If you're still listening, you are the best, and you will be blessed with all of the spooks that you want.
Yes, and we would try blessing you with a spell, but we can't chant.
I'll do that afterwards.
Okay, stay spooky.
Stay spooky.
Stay spooky.